theme for this evening is light, art and community. Now people are attracted to light. Like moths, we drift towards areas of brightness. The human response even has a name, phototropism. We've always gathered around a campfire and looked to the stars for direction, possibly believing that the more we can see, the better our experience of life may be. Whereas once light increased our likelihood of finding food, shelter or companionship, and decreased the likelihood of our being eaten by a predator, it might now bring us together, shine light on a story or an issue, or show us a path forward. In terms of art, design and community engagement, we can help direct people's path of experience and encourage their interaction with the space simply by placing light in the right place. Light has been used for architectural effect throughout human history, and there's a long tradition of light art, a form of visual art where the main medium of expression is light. Throughout art history, artists have experimented with the interplay of light and dark, from Greek sculpture, Renaissance painting, and stained glass windows, through to light sculptures, outdoor light projections, and experimental film. Another great word, chiaroscuro, is the treatment of light and shade in drawing and painting. Before artificial light, our days were controlled by the natural rhythm of the sun. The harnessing of light changed our experience of life, created new possibilities for art. The advent of artificial light allowed artists to use that light as the main form of expression, subject and medium. Contemporary artists continue to explore those possibilities. A great example is currently on show at the National Gallery of Australia. James Turrell, a retrospective, showcases the major works of his almost 50-year career. James has spent his career making art from light and using it to make his audiences feel. And the creative results of contemporary light art are not just for an art audience. The light projections of Vivid Sydney have attracted huge cross-community attention as large-scale public artworks. 2015 is, of course, International Year of Light, and to mark the occasion, UNE and Beyond Empathy are working together to bring you the Arts in the Pub series. Today, again, our theme is light, art and community, and our speakers are Andrew Parker and Kim McConville. Our first speaker, Andrew, will speak about light and community, referring to his long involvement with the community arts, in particular his work with Uralla Arts and the Uralla Lantern Parade. Please join me in welcoming Andrew.
Thank you, and thank you UNE and Beyond Empathy for inviting me tonight. I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey back through my history with light and fire and so on. So, light, fire, utilitarian, creative, destructive. I grew up in New Zealand as a pyromaniac and an amateur ballistics expert. From my earliest memories, I remember fireworks, and of course, fireworks weren't quite enough. They didn't quite do it, so you had to take them apart to get to the component parts and create different types of fire, different types of effects. Explosions, and in the end that wasn't enough either. You could actually buy all the component parts of gunpowder, saltpeter, carbon, and at the local chemist shop we used to trade copper that we used to rip off from any source we could, trade it in for the money to buy fireworks, to buy other explosive materials. So I kind of remember this destructive force, and a bit later breaking into DMR sheds, stealing petrol and diesel and creating bigger and bigger explosions, and I still look at my fingers today and count them, and it's a bloody miracle. So the interesting thing about this is that juxtaposition between creativity and destruction. And also in the young mind, there's I've never studied psychology and developmental psychology, but I probably would have been between the ages of 5 and 12 at that stage. And going back a few years, I worked for the Department of Housing on a project out at Moree where young people were torching houses. And I think there's probably a, it goes back to that primeval fascination with fire as a destructive force, as a sense of your own power, but also along with a complete lack of consequence. And I think that probably comes a little bit later. I want to highlight two creative uses of light back then. We really led a feral existence, and home was a source of shelter and food, and complete lack of parental supervision let us run wild. I lived a couple of miles outside of what has become a reasonably major provincial centre, and so there were farms, there was sea on one side. It was an idyllic place to create havoc. And being a pyromaniac in New Zealand is very different from being a pyromaniac in Australia, because it's really fucking hard to set fire to the bush over there. And when I came to Australia, I realised that you couldn't talk freely about being a pyromaniac. It just wasn't on. So so the two events. So we used to make huts or cubby houses, and we developed in one particular cubby house, because the thing about cubby houses is that you build them and you sit in them and you immediately get bored, and so you go out and rip the materials off the neighbour's kids' cubby house, and then you get back and you find that yours has been ransacked. But we made this water wheel and developed a bicycle dynamo to power an electric light in the cubby house. So that was the first kind of I was getting a bit older then, and so there was a little bit of introspection, a little bit of thought going into things. And then later, after probably alcohol around 15, other substances around 16, and I probably left school around 16, worked for an architect. It was pretty provincial, small town architect who had great pretensions to Frank Lloyd Wright. But I had a mate who lived in a surf club building, and the interesting thing about Nelson, where I grew up, if anyone knows that town and the beach, the waves get to about that high, and so having a surf club in Nelson was a bit pointless. But this guy rented the surf club, and we were, into smoking grass and stuff at that stage, and getting even more introspective and thoughtful about our processes. And I remember we made, I don't know where it came from, but we made these rice paper lanterns, and they were lit by a sardine tin with meths or something underneath, and they just rise up. They would create their own buoyancy and then just float off into the air. And I'm sure we've all seen images of festivals in Thailand and other places. Don't recommend it around here. It's something to do with, the flammability of the Australian circumstance. So how in New Zealand and becoming an adult do you legitimise pyromania? Well, ceramic art. Fantastic. Become a potter, you can play with fire till your heart's content. And that was my career for 22 years, from the mid-70s until the late 90s. Came to Australia in 84. Came to Urella in 84 actually, but 79, and started off, had a ceramics career, and then moved into community development work in the arts as a rado in the Upper Hunter. And one of the most memorable projects there was the creation of a project called The Art of Celebration. And I actually found a video cassette. I don't think it was beta, I think it was the other format, VRS is it, or VHS. So it was a long time ago. But we had this Art of Celebration where we had a circus in town for a week. We had sculptors working on work. We had someone creating an illuminated gateway. And I think there were visual artists there as well. But that was probably my first experience of what has transformed into lantern making and the creation of that fascination and focus on light. So I was based in the Upper Hunter in Murrurundi at that stage, and I used to travel back to Uralla on the weekends, and it was in that time coming back. Uralla Arts started in probably 96, 97, somewhere around there. And there was a project going on called Youth Fest, and it was a week of developmental workshops with kids in all sorts of arts processes. And I led a workshop on lantern making. No, we made it. We had a great consultative process around, what they wanted to make. And I suggested an animal, and I thought, oh, we'll have some nice native animal. They decided on an elephant, so we built a really rough looking elephant. It had a trunk, it had a tail, and it had a big mass in the middle. They're probably the only points of recognition. But I think with the creation of these sort of things, I think you've just got to throw yourself into it and actually do it. And that's said from the point of view of someone who's been in arts administration and project management and administration since 98 or so. So it's too fucking long, and I really want to get back to practice-based art. So there was these were the first seeds of lantern, what's become the Lantern Parade. Now, it was Australia Day, long time ago, probably close to 8, 10 years ago. We just had a really small event in Alma Park. We had a day where we made these really bodgy lanterns. Probably 15 people came that night, and around the Band Rotunda in Uralla. And it was really great to see kids' faces and the way that they just have this draw into the light and this beautiful feeling. Since then, the Lantern Parade has developed along a formulaic line of basically buying in the Lismore Lantern Parade people to make lanterns with schools. Now, engagement with schools is really difficult. They have a really tight agenda, and I don't know how we got in the beginning, but there seemed to be something that we were offering workshops to kids in all the outlying schools. So as far afield as Kingstown, Rocky River, Walbrook, and all the schools in the Uralla Shire. So I think there was really something that appealed to the school, so that the workshops were held in Uralla Central. So we brought in the lantern makers from Lismore, they brought a few big lanterns with them. Over the years, we've gathered a band of really loyal volunteers who have owned that process. So it's become a two-part process. There's the workshops of making the lanterns with around about 250 kids now from around the region, or around the Shire of Uralla, a few kids from Armidale. And so that's a great engagement tool. Involve the kids and the parents will come. So and we don't give them their lanterns on the day they make the lantern. They have to come back and get them on the Saturday night before the parade. Key point. So the kids bug the shit out of their parents to get back there on Saturday night to get the lanterns. And some of the funniest conversations have been overheard at the lantern parade, where the parents, you know, the dad's saying, "Can't we go to the pub now? Go on, no, we've got to stay, he's coming on." So there's that, there's the lantern making, there's the parade, and then there's usually a performance. So we get the people, they come down down a back street between Uralla Central and Alma Park with their lanterns, and it's a silent parade. So there's generally no music, but the noise of the chatter and the excitement is absolutely, the street is buzzing. Now, I've never actually seen the parade itself because I'm always in the park stage managing the event, so I've never actually seen it. I've seen video of it. But what I do see from up there, the big lanterns split at the corner of Alma Park. All the kids and their parents come through the park and over the little footbridge. The big lanterns go off to the left over on the road. But watching the kids come through the park with these little lanterns, it's just this trail of light coming to the show. And they have to walk in single file. And so it takes forever for them to arrive. And it's just absolutely beautiful. I get this tingling feeling just talking about it. So why do we do it? It's all about that. It's really about the kids and seeing them really engage, especially the little ones. It's really interesting. The boys of that 8 to 10-year-old group bolt. It's a race to the finish line, to the park. And so the art is how to hold them back from the head of the procession. So it's quite hilarious. But so two distinct parts. The development of the show this year was based on the theme of the ZNet project, which is happening in Uralla. And the show itself is really difficult to organise. It's a balance between creativity and the writing of the show, the production of the show, the rehearsal of the show, and that creative side that is always asking the question. But at the end of the day, it's a community event, it's an amateur event, and shit happens. And this year, I could safely say that side of the show was a highly successful fucking disaster. It was just so hard on people. For the first time, my role was really about relationship mending, relationship building, and it really, I think, why the hell do I do it? I work in a project management role at UNE. It's really full on, and I come home at night and I do more arts administration. It's really wearing on me, and so there is a personal toll. and Kim, I'm sure, could relate to this because Kim's been doing arts administration for longer than I have. So,
Sorry, 2 minutes.
sorry?
2 minutes.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, so it's always the creative balance. It's always how far can you push things in, and also the demands of the audience. We're getting an audience of, I don't know, 800 people, possibly 1,000 people in Uralla, town of 2,500 people. So it's probably the biggest kind of creative arts event that happens in Uralla. And so there's a lot of expectation from the community. And how do you balance that? And how do you get to the point where you say, this is enough, this is killing us, we have to pull back. We've gone technical, we've gone big. Now we have to, the creative challenge is to how to scotch expectation, or is it scotching expectation? To draw back, to stay within our creative and human resources, and so that people can have fun. The people that are putting on the event have to have fun. Look, at the end of the day, as I say, I think we do it, I do it for the look on the kids' faces, and every time I see that, it reinforces why I do it. So that's really all I've got to say about light. Destructive, creative, utilitarian. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Andrew? Can I ask about, you mentioned the look on the children's faces and this
Sorry?
The look on the children's faces,
Yeah.
wonder, excitement. Is it similar to adults, do you think? I mean, are we still
Look, that's
amazed by what light and fire can do? Is it something sort of, we still feel it's sort of magical? And
Look, I think that's probably, how many people have been to the Lantern Parade? So,
And I've been in one
You-
in Woodford, and it's amazing to be in it as an adult.
yeah. Look, I think there are probably adults that really enjoy it, others that would rather be at the pub. So, you know, it's that polarised. It's people.
I love the London Parade,
Yeah.
and I've always said to myself, should I go home when I'm still on a high, or shall I just wait and see whether this year I get excited?
Yeah. Look, that's really, that's fantastic. That's my whole justification for scaling it way back. It was really funny because we used to do the performances didn't have any story or message. Now, the last two shows have been, well, this one was scripted, the last one was partially scripted, but before that it was really funny because people would say, what the fuck was that about? There'd be a basic archetypal theme of, idyllic world, disaster happens, resurrection, true world order is maintained.
What are the flow-on effects of having those? What does it do for the community? What does it do you think, in the long term for those kids?
Oh, look, I think it really opens their eyes to the creative process. And especially for kids in small regional areas, it's really important. I took a sculptor, Chris Booth from New Zealand, out to Bandara School many years ago now, and he gave a talk to the kids and showed slides. And there's one kid on the mat that was just busting to ask a question, and he, I think, had grown up probably on a sheep's station, and you can do this stuff for a living. You could see his jaw drop, and the possibility of some other life. It's really, I think, really important. And so I think it opens a door to imagination possibilities.
I also think that, as community arts workers or people running community arts programs, we're pushed the whole time to justify the currency of the work or the impact of the work. And we actually believe having a good time and feeling happy is enough. For that one moment that because we're so, focused on the impact and the value for money and all of those things. And we think as a company that it's a human right to feel happy and participate in an event that just makes you feel happy. That's enough. And it's actually, we had a big team meeting last week that Shireen was involved in, and Jonathan, and we talked about making sure that happiness was the very top outcome indicator that we wanted to work towards. So
I want to really stress that, but also for administrators, please.
Yeah, totally.
Can I ask?
Because the Lantern Parade this year, for me, didn't hold a lot of fun and joy until I saw the faces of the kids.
Could I ask you whether you think that after a few years of this festival or this event, that you think that it also creates an identity or a development of the towns, of the community's identity?
I think it does.
Uella has the Lantern Parade. Uella has the Arts Festival, the Arts Council, Uella Arts. So as a community, it actually expands on or develops their sense of who they are.
Well, absolutely. Look, the really interesting point about that is that we could stop doing the Lantern Parade this year, and that there's a big lag in that public perception. That perception would go on for another 8 to 10 years. Urella was, when I was a potter and ceramic artist there, when I moved there were 8 full-time potters, and then suddenly there was 1. But that creative and the artistic community of Urella there was this huge lag in public perception. Oh, Urella's it. So it will have currency for many years after the event ends.
The lantern's a pretty ancient thing.
Sorry?
The lantern is a pretty
ancient
thing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that it takes a long time for the kids to wander down a single file to get to the park.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering,
they're the
what
boys.
atmosphere do you think is being generated by this gathering around a pretty ancient form of light, really? It's natural light, apart from the more theatrical additions to the whole performance of recent times. It's really quite a sort of, archetypal and even primitive thing to be doing.
Totally. And you really see that in the kids probably up to the age of 8, I'd say. So 8, 9, 10, they're starting to lose it a little bit. But the little kids that sit up the front, because we get them to come in and divide off an area at the front, and they all sit at the front with their lanterns and they're bathed in light and they're sitting there waiting for the show to happen, and it's just gorgeous.
So it's just kind of awe.
Absolute awe. Absolute awe. Yeah. Yeah. Really.
It's an interesting thing I noticed in both years that I witnessed is the show is an anticlimax.
Yeah.
Anything you put on, you begin to open your mouth to convey ideas. It's a total anticlimax.
Yeah, all of it is in...
Yeah. Look, this is really...
The gathering of community in school.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
Walk through town.
It's got a ritual.
Oh, yeah.
It's all in that.
Yeah. It's this is really confirming what I've been feeling. It's that the show getting bigger and more sophisticated. We've got to get it right back down to the essence of. So that's the creative challenge, I think.
I know you're trying to convey a message there, but you have dance in the middle.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, an old bush dance up there, everyone
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
like that'd be the community together again.
Yeah, and you know,
rather than seeing watching a show, which, you know, everyone
Yeah,
has
yeah.
a different expectation of.
exactly. Yeah.
People involved in a
Fire, a
celebrating
bonfire.
the event,
Yeah, yeah. Which is what the what's the name of the there's another, oh god, I've forgotten the name of it. There's another fire event that the Steiner kids do. Anyone? No, I can't remember the name of it, but they have a bonfire. You know, look, there are all sorts of public risk as well, so you have to look at the risk assessment and all of that kind of crap as well. But yeah, I mean, it's not. You have to be responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, cool.